The ending of Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts is genius, and I'll break down the complex and multi-layered statement that Kipo Season 3 makes on the potential for redemption. Now more than ever, the world of Kipo feels so fleshed out that you could easily envision a theme park of the surface world as an upcoming project from the creators of Ratland. This third season understands just how large of a sandbox it has access to, and it takes advantage of everything inside, unafraid of embracing a different format to do it. Because it must be stated that, compared to the first two seasons, it's a rather different story this time. There's no search for a burrow, we mostly stay in one place. And there's no search for Kipo's dad Leo. He's a part of the main hangout crew now. Heck, any loved one that is captured over the course of this season tends to be rescued by the episode following their capture. I think there was a considerable risk to this, since part of the irresistible fun of Kipo is its non-stop intensity. So if the characters are not in hot pursuit of a single goal, is it possible that the fire could go out? Well, let me reassure you that it does not by any means. Season 3 isn't a single rescue mission. It isn't a single battle. It's an all-out war. Mutes don't just need to be appeased so the heroes can pass by them on their journey. The heroes need to permanently bring these mutes to their side. No more short-term plans. It's gotta be all in. So begins the Human-Mute Ultimate Friendship Alliance, or HMUFA if you want to use its handy acronym, which basically functions as the United Nations of this show. It's an ever-expanding veritable who's who of colorful characters that we've met over the course of this show's revolving door of guests. And it keeps the home base of Season 3 from feeling too static or comfortable. And it's here in this alliance that Season 3's conversation about redemption is able to begin. This alliance seems like the ideal end result for this mute human world, one of communication and diplomacy. But is it one that can be realistically attained? It's called into question if perhaps it's merely
a beautiful dream that the world just isn't ready for.
And that is what our characters have to grapple with. The first season of Kipo gave the biggest character journey to Wolf, as she gradually learned to trust again. And the second season gave the biggest character journey to Kipo herself, exploring her origins and abilities. Season 3, I'd say, services its ensemble, the most evenly of them all, which is very welcome as it may be the last time we see all these characters. Unless we get movies. Get it trending, everybody. They're talking about a Wolf movie on Twitter. We gotta make it happen. I was worried that in such a highly populated cast in the home base this season, that the main cast would blend together into one samey, heroic voice. But Season 3 proved that there was more for all of them to individually do. Just as I hoped, we finally got to see the story of how Benson and Dave met, and it did not disappoint. Dave and Benson proved through their backstory that war is but a century-spanning fight for something as trivial as a fan. An endless cycle that led them to each become the last of their own peoples. With this added insight, their friendship is made more meaningful than ever. Yet another representation of redemption that's been actually baked into the show's main cast all along in retrospect. Plus, there's more Benson and Troy's relationship developing this season. I enjoyed the acknowledgement of how difficult it was for these two boys to make time for each other amidst the constant chaos of the gang's adventures. I'm glad they had a good prom, and their future in the food business looks bright. Continuing with the ensemble, we also witnessed Wolf's past come back to haunt her, with the very friend from her pack who once betrayed her, now coming back in search of help. Margot. And I was very surprised by the direction that this story took at pretty much every turn. Though the gang decides to help Margot, it is not Kipo who pushes in this direction. Kipo actually gives Wolf the space to decide what she wants to do, since this is her relationship and it should be her choice.
I respect your boundaries, but I'm here if you need me to trample her!
And it is Wolf who, in the spirit of Kipo, agrees to help even though it isn't really help that was deserved. It's details like this that really show off character growth and the loving friendship between these two girls. It was also surprising to see that this storyline was not meant to affirm the idea that Wolf should open her heart to this character again, since Margot actually once again betrays her, and we never later even get a tidy resolution to this. I think in general, between story beats like this or the attempt by Kipo to avoid her prophesied destiny, Season 3 more than ever shows that sometimes a bright, determined, open-minded attitude isn't exactly the solution. Sometimes the world's just gonna take you to some dark places, and you'll need to fight for what you believe in. Truly, I was surprised by just how dark the season could get in general. There were some real losses and consequences throughout Season 3, and it's impressive how the show managed to depict them without losing a sense of its identity. Yum Yin Hammerpaw and the many other mutes who were quote-unquote cured, though, did in fact lose their identities, and it caught me off guard. It helped keep the stakes high and really legitimized Amelia as a force to be reckoned with. I was concerned that Amelia the human, as an ultimate big bad for this show, would perhaps not be powerful enough to be a truly intimidating threat to our heroes. But she really was taking characters out with that cure, and it all helped cement the feeling of finality throughout this season. I thought for sure we'd at least see these characters turn back into full-on mutes by the end of the show. But the decision to leave that thread hanging, I think really helped cement the sense of loss that this season conveyed. But we can't talk about loss without talking about Scarlemagne, who, by the way, is arguably the MVP of the show 2 seasons in a row, and this time in a very different manner. He's no longer the antagonist. In fact, he's a bit of a comedic secret weapon a lot of the time, his pompously embittered remarks adding some edge to the safe haven of the Timbercat village.
The secret handshake didn't fix 200 years of malcontent.
Scarlemagne's path to redemption is gradual and believable, and it feels all the more believable since they keep him under lock and key, even as tensions begin to subside. I think it's a wise move that they had Scarlemagne put in the work to apologize and build up trust properly over the course of the entire season, and that his redemption was not merely one last impulsive act of heroism to force you to forgive his past actions from when he was alive. He had earned his place as one of the heroes before that final act, and he will sorely be missed. With so many of her mute friends being taken out, even Kipo herself, for once, severely questioned her optimistic resolve. She was ready to go sink the humans' boat since she didn't see them as her people anymore. It was very interesting to see this more vengeful side of Kipo, but in a context that made sense and was rooted in her protective qualities as a character. I also really appreciated the fact that now that Kipo is one with her Jaguar self, the Jaguar form was not used as simply a manifestation of her anger. Even in the episode when she nearly gives into said anger, she's shown both caringly listening to her friends while in the Jaguar form, and being angry while in the human form. This goes a long way to show that both of these forms are Kipo, and in the end, they wisely didn't vilify her beastly form as an Avatar State-esque uncontrollable monster, as they seemed to hint at a little bit midway through Season 2. It would have really ran counter to the inclusive attitude of the show towards mutes, and I'm grateful that they didn't go that route. I also appreciated that the show took Kipo and Wolf, the real core duo since the beginning, and wrapped back around to a believable conflict between them at the end. I appreciated how much since the first season that these two girls stood by each other's side, unwavering, but it felt like one last dispute between the two of them was full circle, and also executed well. Wolf leaves, but it's explicitly in the name of helping Kipo, just in her own darker way, until she realizes why it would undermine their cause, and they reunite for the final battle. Beyond giving much-deserved spotlights to the main duos of the show, Benson and Dave and Kipo and Wolf, the series also explored some fun new dynamics before its close. We had a cute subplot between Leo and Dave that took advantage of a relatively lower-stakes setting for comedic purposes, even though it ultimately served to keep Leo's mind off his daughter's life being in danger. Which, yeah, actually, that's not low stakes, that's pretty heavy. But the big surprise duo that this season let us see in action was Wolf and Scarlemagne, two characters that were a lot more alike than I realized. These are both characters whose adoptive families betrayed them, and sowed trust issues at young ages, and fittingly, they encourage each other's desires to wipe out those who broke their trust.
Okay, possible that you're bringing out the worst in each other.
They also both in their own ways see Kipo as a sister, and the chaotic actions these two fighters take to protect the pure soul they love so much really unite them in the name of sincerity, even if it is misguided. The show really just continues to innovate by reworking the elements already at its disposal. Mulholland continues to be Kipo's awesome sleeper agent, as in an agent that can receive or transmit intel through sleep. That's how I like to refer to him. And they use him in a wildly creative and innovative manner, as he conjures up a simulation of a fight Kipo must have, allowing her to try different methods of success, almost like a video game.
What a fun way to use me!
They also come up with a really smart reason as to why someone as powerful as him can't fix everything, since if he gets spiked with Amelia's cure, it could easily be distributed rapidly and spell doom for all. The show really is great at ensuring that every story direction that may in lesser hands feel like a cop-out, instead feel extremely satisfying. Like Song finally coming back in her human form because Leo uses Amelia's cure, or the cure not working on Kipo since it was made from her DNA. All these things work because they set it up beforehand so that they can make sense, and they never are presented as substitutes for more meaningful resolutions to storylines. No, they're earned moments that we come to along the way. But now, I want to talk about the messages that the show ends on, because it really makes some big moves there at its conclusion. And here's where we get to the show's real final thoughts on redemption. Wolf is forced to reckon with her anger towards mutes on a deeper level than ever before. But it's not a catharsis reached by virtue of Margot, the mute who wronged her, redeeming herself. No, it's a mature decision that Wolf has to come to on her own, in spite of Margot having wronged her.
Why do you wear that wolf? You know deep down Kipo's whole mutes can be our friends thing is bogus.
If we're going to prom, I'm gonna need to wear something else.
And when the fireworks fall and Amelia's cure almost rains down on the mutes below, we see how so many relationships have been repaired, grown, and redeemed throughout the series. In general, the humans are protecting other mutes, but specifically, we see Benson, as always, protecting Dave, and we now recognize them as two prominent representatives of the war between humans and mutes, that they overcame by opening up to each other. Wolf, the first full-on human we saw in the show, protects Mondu, the first full-on mute we saw in the show, who she once saw as nothing more than a meal in the first episode. And most significantly of all, Leo and Song finally do right by Hugo. They shield Hugo from the fireworks in a manner that recalls how they nursed him in his youth, by covering him with a blanket. It is thanks to this gesture that it is possible for Hugo to save Kipo in the end, and for good to win out, ultimately. And so the transitive property of empathy is proven. But empathy is nowhere to be found in the mind of Amelia, which we get to take a peek inside. Completing the tradition, this Kipo finale features a character within their Megamute transformation, in an abstract scene inside their minds. Except this time, it's basically a mech battle with supernatural animals. We can see the little human controllers fighting from the inside and everything. And it's through this clever conceit that we see Kipo and Amelia's climactic battle. And when Amelia in her Megamute form takes some hits, we see within her mind's eye the effect of that damage. There's a visualization of Amelia's Megamute form inside her mind, and it is visibly hurting. Amelia has never shown any sympathy towards mutes before, and only just pursued her own selfish agenda. But it truly speaks volumes that even when she sees the mute form of herself in metaphysical pain, Amelia feels no pity. Yep, this is the mind of someone who killed her own brother, alright. And she didn't even seem that mean in the past, but she came to that decision so easily. She could have at least tried to talk to her brother for a little longer before deciding the only option was to murder him in cold blood. Yikes! It was quite messed up. But still, Kipo doesn't play like that. When given the opportunity to leave Amelia trapped in the prison of her own mind, Kipo determines that Amelia deserves to be punished. But not in that way.
Nobody deserves to have their mind taken away from them.
In the end, Kipo gives Amelia a chance to go down the path of redemption, and Amelia takes the opportunity to attempt to kill Kipo once and for all. And can I just say, how much I love that Mondu was the one to violently take out Amelia 2 seasons in a row. And no, despite how it may appear at first, Amelia does not suffer a Disney villain-style death, falling from a great height, and just inactively eliminating the problem for our hero. She instead falls into the slimy hands of Fun Gus. And our heroes could bring Amelia out of it if they really wanted to, but they actively decide that,
Trapped in her old burrow with a mute that wants nothing more than to be her best friend.
I guess that's as good a punishment as any.
I dig it. There's been a lot of discourse when it comes to television animation's depiction of redemption. You want to encourage empathy, but sometimes people feel certain characters have crossed the line. I've personally enjoyed seeing both sides of the coin appear in shows like Steven Universe and Infinity Train, and I always thought there was merit in seeing both kind of story. Now, all that said, I feel like Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts in the end managed to achieve a very holistic and clever approach that encapsulates it all. Kipo reaches a complex resolution about redemption, that the potential is always there, and a selfless decision to see the good in someone might end up saving you someday, as it did with Scarlemagne. Though, not everyone will end up changing for the better, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't give them a chance. I appreciated that even though Amelia didn't end up redeeming herself, they were still willing to show her begin from a more sympathetic place. It proved that just because the character is complex doesn't mean that a positive turn for them is guaranteed or owed. You can look emotionally vulnerable in a flashback and still end up being a jerk after all, and a jerk that does not belong in the beautiful vision of the future that Kipo has. So, all in all, congratulations are in order for everyone involved in this absolute beast of a show.
Dave, you genius! You did it again!
It's painted a picture of a fantastical apocalypse that lends more hope to our own in 2020. In the end, as the epilogue shows, the beautiful dream Kipo had was indeed one that the world was ready for. And I'm glad that this specific animation studio allowed us all to see that. As a matter of fact, her dream works. But hey, DreamWorks, we're gonna need you to greenlight Rad's idea for a movie, okay? Alright, so you know what we're gonna do? I have a plan.
October 23rd, 2020.
It's coming right up. It's the expiration date of the milk shown in the first episode. Let's use that day to get the Kipo movie trending on Twitter. Because the Age of Wonderbeasts has only just begun. Thank you to all my patrons. Special shout out to Justin Chapman, Light, Danny, and Caesar. If you're interested in joining the Patreon, check out the link in the description where you can get shoutouts, exclusive videos, and a say on what content you'd like to see from me next. See you all on the surface.